For the past 35 years, I've been working with kidney cancer and clinical trials at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And during this time, I have seen and been a part of the clinical trials which have helped advance the care of kidney cancer. My role as a clinical trial nurse is to educate patients about possible treatments, potential side effects, what the treatment plan might be, helping them screen to see if they're eligible for a clinical trial. And when they're on trial, I help coordinate their care as well. So today we're going to talk about what is a clinical trial / protocol, what are the types of trials, why participate, how trials are conducted, who is the candidate, and how do we find that, what are the steps, what to expect, and how to monitor trials participants. So clinical trials are research studies to test new medical treatments or new combinations of treatments. They may help to test if a therapy is safe and if it works better than an existing therapy. A protocol is the written design for a clinical trial. Protocols are what clinicians use to guide the care required while a patient is participating on it. It's a very detailed document. It will have information that lists the drugs being used and the goal of the study. It will list out who is eligible for this study, also referred to as an inclusion and exclusion criteria list. These criteria are to help protect against risks for patients and to ensure that it's safe for a participant to be part of the trial. An example would be checking their blood work to make sure their platelets are in a good range before possibly starting a therapy that could reduce the number of platelets they have. The protocol will state all the tests that need to be performed baseline to ensure the patient is eligible, what tests are needed to ensure safety while receiving therapy, and what tests are done to evaluate patient response to the therapy. It will list out blood work that's needed baseline as well as throughout. The drugs, the doses, the frequency of administration are also found in the protocol. Additionally, the protocol outlines how to manage side effects if they occur. For example, more frequent blood work, or possibly the patient may need to hold the drug until they feel better. It's a safety measure for the patients. Using the protocol, the consent form is written, which is what the patient receives to review, ask questions, and sign if they're interested in participating. I tend to use the word clinical trial and protocol interchangeably, but they are a little different. Why participate in a clinical trial? You may benefit. You may have access to a newer therapy. It may be better than existing therapies. While you are receiving therapy, you need to reach out to your healthcare team with any side effects you might be experiencing or questions you may have. If you do a clinical trial, you become part of a team and you are followed very closely to make sure that you're feeling all right, that you're feeling good. You are contributing to medical advancements. This may help other patients. It may indirectly benefit you. How do providers decide if someone is eligible for a specific trial? Your current oncologist may know of trials at their own institution that you are eligible for, or they may know of a colleague conducting a trial at another institution, but you might be eligible for it, and they can reach out to see, as well as help you make that transition to perhaps have a visit with that physician. You can search clinicaltrials.gov to see what is out there. You can seek out an NCI designated comprehensive cancer center for an appointment. Some trials require pre-screening steps to see if eligible. And pre-screening could refer to genetic testing before going on a trial, or just a preliminary look at what the inclusion-exclusion criteria are for that specific trial, and also knowing what your prior treatment history is. Pathology is always needed for a clinical trial, and some trials may require an additional biopsy either pre-treatment or while on trial for research purposes. The trial enrollment process. This is a time for you to ask questions. What are your treatment options? If you do this trial, would it prevent you from doing a standard of care treatment down the road? It's a question that you do want to have with your attending, your clinician, your oncologist. So if you don't, if you do a standard of care option, would you be eligible for this trial later? Informed consent. The official screening process for a clinical trial does not start until the consent signed by the patient and the physician. The consent is a shortened version with parts of the protocol. It outlines the tests that are required. It sometimes has a table of tests and time points for each test. Consents might be on an iPad to read and sign, or sometimes you can get a hard copy. That's a sample, and you can write on that to write your questions down and circle things that you would like more information about before you actually sign. But whether you sign on an iPad or hard copy, the consent will be given to you for your records. And it's good if you are on the trial to be sure to share this with your other physicians, such as your primary MD or a cardiologist that you might see. Baseline screening tests to go on a clinical trial are done for the eligibility, and they have a set time frame in which they need to be completed before a patient can be registered and can start on therapy. Clinical trials, are voluntary, but they are a commitment to come and see the clinician in specified timeframes. As a patient, you have a responsibility to inform your healthcare team of any side effects you are having so they can better help you. And now I will mute so Nazi can present additional information.
My name is Nazi Zomarodian. I am a nurse practitioner at UCLA in California. I've been working with clinical trials as a director of the clinical trials for GU space for the last 25 years. And it's absolute pleasure to be one of the Kidney Cancer Association member. So I'm just gonna start continuing what Patricia started and tell you that what type of clinical trials are available. There are different type of clinical trials. Some of them are preventative trials. That is that we're looking at the people who may never had a disease and or we wanted to make sure that if they have a disease, we're preventing it from returning. And it could be medicinal, it could be vaccine, or it could be any lifestyle changes. There are a lot of dietary trials that's happening with the supplements that to help and prevent kidney cancer or preventing from returning. Some of the trials are screening trials, and we just wanted to detect the disease and health conditions. These can be scans, different blood tests, biomarkers, and this is for screening and knowing that if anybody is actually going to get this disease or the health condition. Diagnostic trials is different procedures for a particular disease or condition. You mostly hear from treatment trials and to test a new treatment. You heard about it all morning that most of the drugs that all these esteemed colleagues talk to you about, they come from clinical trials. They actually come from the treatment trials that we did for single drug or combination of the new approaches, different surgery or radiation therapy. So participating in clinical trials, as Patricia mentioned, it's really, really important you're taking part of your own health and also the future of all the people that they may actually get this disease. Behavior trials that promote behavior changes and designs to improve health, quality of life trials or supportive care trials explore and measure ways to improve the comfort and quality of life with people with condition and illness. So it's really important to understand what phases of clinical trials you're participating on. When you get the protocol, when you get the informed consent, that in the title of the clinical trials, it actually states that what phase of clinical trial it is. It can be preclinical, which is testing the drugs in the lab. It could be a phase one, which is established to effect of the new drug in humans, but the most part of the phase one is really to establish the safety, that how safe it is to actually use this. And it can be in a healthy population and to just basically gather the information for the side effects of the drug, how is it absorbed, how is it distributes, and going through the people's body. So we may actually draw a lot of blood, do a lot of urine tests, do a lot of different tests to see how much of this drug is actually make it to where it's supposed to get. And the safety is important, and then we will find that what is the right dose of this drug that can be effective and also can be safe. Now, this is in a very smaller population. Then we move to phase two, that it's a slightly larger population of individual that affected by a specific disease. It can be in kidney cancer as general, or it can be in a specific pathology of the kidney cancer. But now we wanted to actually test it in the patients that they have that condition. And if we were successfully established that it is effective and it is safe, then we move to phase three, that it confirms that it works and checks for all the side effects in the larger population. And hopefully that would be a bridge to take us to this drug to become to the market, become FDA approved, and become available to the general population. But the work is not done. The phase four is the post-marketing. So we still gathering information, even though the drug is in the mainstream and is being used in a population of the national or international capacity, but the data is still comes in. And if people reporting the side effects that we did not capture during any of the previous phases, then it become public, and then it become actually more available to you to know that now that the larger population using it, is it still safe? Is it still effective? Is it still doing its job? And that's the phase four. So how is your safety being protected? It's really, really important that we all have an oversight, since we say we all have bosses, but this is really important for you as a patient, that your rights being protected, your risks are being reported to you, your safety while you're receiving treatment on these trials being actually assured. So we use IRB, which is Institutional Review Board. Some academic center and big universities, they have their own IRB, and it's made up from the mainstream population. We have priests on our IRB. Then it's actually professionals that they are experts in that specific protocol or clinical trial that is being studied, and oncologists, urologists, consistent with statisticians to see that this is actually makes sense to do this, and ethical rights of the participant being protected. FDA, the Food Drug Administration, is charged with overseeing all the effectiveness and safety of the treatments, and looks at if this is actually helps for the cure, control symptoms, or delays progression of the disease that we specifically using these drugs for. Now, there are a lot of other subcommittees that they looking for the radiation safety if you're getting many scans on these trials, which I'm sure that a lot of patients that they're concerned. So I always tell my patients that be assured that this radiation are not more harmful than the cancer in their bodies. But there are not just my word, there are a lot of subcommittees that they looking into basically monitoring and policing us that you're right and in an ethical or moral and way to be actually protected. So, as Patricia mentioned, and as we all know, any drugs, any molecule that has any effect, it has side effects. The adverse reaction or side effects is obviously unintended reaction to this drug. It could be injuries, it could be overdosing, and it could be interaction with other medication. And as Patricia mentioned, we are monitoring through the trials, after the trials. That's why you have all these follow-ups, they have all these visits. You get a call from your clinical trials nurse, you get a call from your clinical teams, you get the visits more frequently than other because we wanted to make sure that this drug side effects being captured, it's at minimal. We grading those side effects, we go risk versus benefits, and we obviously treat those as it happens. Sometimes you have to hold the drug while we're treating these unwanted side effects of the drug. Sometimes you have to go to the lower level dose of the drugs that you're receiving, but where safety has been assured and the side effects are being monitored and documented. And when you look at the drugs that they're already FDA approved and post marketed, when you go buy a bottle of aspirin or Tylenol in a pharmacy, that you can see that there is a lot of fine prints printed on the back of the drug with coming with the brochure that it's actually has all those side effects that has been captured, and it's captured and it tells you if it's mild, is it moderate, is it severe, is it life threatening, and this is all coming from the data that is captured through the clinical trials. So the designs of the clinical trials, again, is something that you may see at the headline and in the title of the protocol clinical trials that you're participating. The trial can be in one center, can be just done at UCLA or Memorial Sloan Kettering, or it can be multi-center. We all work together. We have centers in the West Coast, East Coast, South part of the country. It's depends on how large the trial is. So your doctors and your clinical care team can tell you that what would be actually the center closest to you, because they may be actually a lot of centers that they're participating. It could be just in the United States, or it could be international, a lot of European sites, or any part of the world participating in that trial. It could be actually we're going with a molecule or the drug that we're testing head to head with placebo, which can be a sugar pill or a sugar liquid. It could be something that we wanted to see what is the point of this drug? Would you better off if you're getting nothing? Or sometimes actually goes on against that what is already in the market as a standard of care. So we comparing this new treatment to what is already available to prove, is it better for you? Is it effective more than what it's already in the market? and you can get it anywhere you want as a standard of care. Sometimes we don't know, and the study is blinded. There are just people that in the pharmacy or at the sponsor sites that they making the drugs. There are few people that they know that what are you getting? Are you getting a placebo or are you getting the actual treatment? Um, we obviously unblinded if it's needed, if you have a side effects that we can't explain, if you're in great danger or injury happened, then the study can get unblinded. And sometimes it's open label. Everybody knows, including you, that what you're receiving on this clinical trial. And sometimes that somebody in any institution, they have a great idea and they think that some of the other treatments that being used in other diseases spaces, they may be actually good for kidney cancer, but we don't know that until we do the clinical trials. So those are investigator initiated trials. We talked about blinded and open label. So you may actually get randomized, and the randomization is by chance. It's like tossing a coin. So it can't be actually a process that I or you as a patient have no control over it. It's by chance, randomly by the computer. You've been assigned the treatment that it's the arms of the study, if there are multiple treatments involved. So you'll be assigned to one treatment or another. Blinded and masked, that we talked about it, and it's actually assures that we are not biased, and it's collection of the data. It's scientifically and is accurate. And as I said, there are very not many people know what you're on, as specifically your clinical team can be blinded. Open label, as I said, we all know, and you know what you're getting. And placebo is an inactive substance that you can be randomized to get that in the double-blind placebo-controlled trials. So, what are the key aspects of participation in the clinical trials? Patricia mentioned inclusion exclusion criteria, and it can be related to the age, gender, medical history. These criteria help to ensure that we are getting a reliable results. And these inclusion exclusion trial criteria in the clinical trials, we can't bend them. These are protocol and we have to follow them. Sometimes they look at your pathology, and if you have a specific kind of kidney cancer, that this clinical trial may not be for you. If we know from preclinical studies, for instance, this drug can cause a lot of harm to the liver or heart, and you already have some heart or liver condition that it's not managed and it's still active, then we may actually exclude you from that trial based on the criteria for your own protection and safety. And this list is long, and obviously, if you made a cut of the inclusion and exclusion criteria, you signed the consent, you passed all the tests, then you're here for the day one, you're being enrolled, and this is a day that we celebrate with you. Is the first step to make you better. Is exciting for clinical team. It should be exciting for you. You're taking a step to basically make you better and hopefully make the disease go away. We look at all the data that we captured, all the blood work, all the tests that were done, and we kind of reevaluating it because from the time you signed the consent and all the tests has been done, it may be a while from the baseline. We do a physical exam, we check your medications that you're on again. We wanted to make sure you understand the treatment risks and benefit, and we wanted to give you all the contact of the people for non-emergency and emergency. As Patricia mentioned, we're here with you, a clinical team, from day zero to the end, and even after that for the follow-ups. We do all the necessary tests as is stated in the protocol, and that's the day that you're receiving your first dose of either experimental or standard care or the treatment you were assigned to. As I said, we follow-ups are intense, and I know patients and caregivers and the families, they get a little put down by how many visits that they have to make. But it is really, really important for us to follow up and make sure you're safe, make sure we're collecting the data, and we make sure that you actually taking your medication as you should, and you're reporting to us um, anything that happens to you that is out of ordinary. And it is actually our job, and we're mandated by FDA and all of those committees to make sure that we're actually looking after you and also reporting back to you that what we have found out so far. Is this actually been effective? How are other people doing in the other centers? And also, we wanted to make sure that there are actually tests that's been done in the other centers and how other patients are doing. This is mandatory for us to report that to you. So, when would be the time that you come off the trial? Well, if we're doing the test and we actually see that your disease is worsening or not getting better over time with giving this drug, then is the time that we actually have to make a decision that if you're participating in these clinical trials is actually helping you. Are you getting any benefit from taking this? Or this is the time to actually look into another options. It could be another clinical trials. It could be a standard care. Your clinical team will go over all of your tests and they will tell you that the decision made based on obviously the data that is being collected, and sometimes it's effectiveness of the drug, but sometimes it's actually the side effects. Sometimes we are evaluating and we see that this drug is actually putting you in a hospital, making you sick. It's affecting your daily living activities. And then that's benefit versus risk. If you actually are more at risk with this experimental treatment than you're drawing benefit, then that would be another reason that to stop the clinical trials. So as I said, we will follow you up. We will call you. We will ask you to come back because there may be some side effects actually happens even after you finished successfully and you gave all the treatment, you're not effectively getting treatments, but there are side effects that they can appear immediately after or even surface years later, especially with gene therapy, we see that. And we wanted you to have extended follow-up to just see that how are these treatments compare in the long run, how you interact with other treatments or intervention that you're getting now, which is years later. And we want to see the health outcome. We want to see the quality of your life. We want to look at the mortality, and we wanted to see that how is it the long-term impact of this on your overall health.